Oh boy. Okay, let's hear his opinions on male privilege.
The next argument was actually 10 seconds after was something that I said 10 seconds after my last argument, which was men already have privilege. I've already stated that men have privilege, and as far as men's rights movement is about maintaining the patriarchy, I still stand by that. Men already have privilege. I stand by this. Including all, he brings up again the homeless man argument, because society really cares about them, blah, blah, blah. Again, that's kind of a bit of a straw man, because you're bringing up this whole idea of how you're really kind of bringing up a bit of it's actually more repetitive, actually, to one of your past arguments, because you bring up the homeless argument, and that's not really a very good argument, because as I stated earlier, the homelessness is not discriminatory, and for the most part I would say is actually pretty equally on a pretty equal footing on both sides.
Only if you ignore statistics across the Western world. Once again, 3/4 of the homeless are male. This is hardly something that would happen if all males were privileged.
Because I think that men and women are both... I'm not even going to get into this any further. Again, straight down the middle of the line, homelessness is a gender-neutral problem. Homelessness is pretty equal on both sides. I view it as just a human issue. I don't view it as left or right, this, that, or the other thing. I view homelessness as straight down the middle, a human issue. It's a male issue, it's a female issue, it's a straight issue, it's a gay issue, it's a it's a young person issue, it's an older person issue, it's a civilian issue, it's a military issue. Straight down the line, it's just a human issue. Homelessness. Now, if this was, I can't even really think of much to really to argue into, because I am trying to look towards your point of view to make an argument maybe for you. I don't really think I could make one.
Well, I don't need you to make an argument for me. I've already made my own argument. If what feminists say is in fact true, and that all males, by the virtue of just being born with a penis, have some form of social privilege over those without penises, then why would the vast majority, 3/4 of the homeless, be male? It just doesn't make any sense. Of course, a better way of looking at things is that some males have some privileges and some females have some privileges, and the biggest decider on who has privilege and who doesn't is economics, not gender at all. In fact, males are disadvantaged for being males in many ways, because we don't take male issues seriously as a society. That's the point.
And homelessness is not exactly I don't really view that as anything. And to say that, and to use that as your argument about how men don't have privilege is is a bad example to use in your favor, because again, it's just a human issue. But yes, men do. But I still stand by my point. In many cases, men still actually have privilege. They still make more than women.
The word you're looking for is earn more. But we'll get to this in upcoming episodes.
Still are more likely to be promoted than women. Women are actually more susceptible to sexual harassment, though it does happen to men as well. but it's just not also widely reported. Now, you can also make the argument that because it's not widely reported, that men are more susceptible to it.
Okay, so you're saying that men also get sexually assaulted but are less likely to report it. And this is somehow male privilege? Do you think maybe they're less likely to report it because it isn't taken as serious? Maybe? Do you think maybe that could be the reason?
But again, those numbers are not there. I think it's an illogical fallacy to even say that, because even if we had the numbers, I still don't think it's going to be as much of an issue for men as it is for women.
Well, actually, we do have the numbers from the CDC, no less. That is, if you consider forced to penetrate a form of rape. Unfortunately, officially it's not considered that, but realistically it is, isn't it? I guess that's another form of male privilege, is it? Somehow? Maybe?
Men still have a higher, men still are more, what's a way I can think of, I'm trying to think while I go along. Men have more of a propensity towards having positions of political power or any sort of power in general than women do.
You do realise that the majority of voters are in fact women? Do you understand how democracy actually works?
There are powerful women that are in different businesses, like Carly Fiorina, Meg Whitman, what's another one? And even political power, such as, Nancy Pelosi. But again, in the sense of the actual play-by-play of it, women are less likely to be put into these positions of power than their male counterparts. Their male counterparts are actually they're going to be men are actually more susceptible to be put into positions of power, positions of higher power, ranking power, political power, economic power, and definitely social power than women are. Men just hold men hold more power than women do.
We are now going through an amazing and unprecedented moment where the power dynamics between men and women are shifting very rapidly. And in many of the places where it counts the most, women are, in fact, taking control of everything. In my mother's day, she didn't go to college. Not a lot of women did. And now, for every 2 men who get a college degree, 3 women will do the same. Women, for the first time this year, became the majority of the American workforce. And they're starting to dominate lots of professions: doctors, lawyers, bankers, accountants. Over 50% of managers are women these days. And in the 15 professions projected to grow the most in the next decade, all but 2 of them are dominated by women. So the global economy is becoming a place where women are more successful than men, believe it or not. And this economic changes are starting to rapidly affect our culture, what our romantic comedies look like, what our marriages look like, what our dating lives look like, and our new set of superheroes. For a long time, this is the image of American manhood that dominated: tough, rugged, in control of his own environment. A few years ago, the Marlboro Man was retired and replaced by this much less impressive specimen, who is a parody of American manhood. And that's what we have in our commercials today. The phrase firstborn son is so deeply ingrained in our consciousness that this statistic alone shocked me. In American fertility clinics, 75% of couples are requesting girls and not boys. And in places where you wouldn't think, such as South Korea, India, and China, the very strict patriarchal societies are starting to break down a little, and families are no longer strongly preferring firstborn sons. If you think about this, if you just open your eyes to this possibility and start to connect the dots, you can see the evidence everywhere. You can see it in college graduation patterns, in job projections, in our marriage statistics. You can see it in the Icelandic elections, which you'll hear about later. And you can see it in South Korean surveys on son preference, that something amazing and unprecedented is happening with women. Certainly, this is not the first time that we've had great progress with women. The 20s and the 60s also come to mind. But the difference is that back then, it was driven by a very passionate feminist movement that was trying to project its own desires. Whereas this time, it's not about passion and it's not about any kind of movement. This is really just about the facts of this economic moment that we live in. The 200,000-year period in which men have been top dog is truly coming to an end, believe it or not. And that's why I talk about the end of men.
And it's not saying we haven't come to great strides yet, but I do personally believe that men still have privilege, and because they've always had privilege throughout history. You know, it has been a pretty male-dominated society, for most of the, especially in the sense of the last 2,000 years, because men have typically, especially through the white male Christian, the white straight male Christian has typically tended to hold more power over, say, his black female lesbian and atheist counterpart.
Well, it's hardly a fair comparison, because white, straight Christian males would have vastly outnumbered black, lesbian, female atheists. So obviously there would have been more white, straight Christian males in positions of power, just by the very fact that they were more numerous throughout history. But I would tend to agree with you that through large portions of history, Christians have had advantages over atheists, and straight people have had advantages over gays and lesbians, and whites have had advantages over blacks, and in some ways males have had advantages over females. Although that last category is a lot more complex than we are often led to believe by feminists, because women have also been vastly more protected than those other categories.
It's really one of those things where we could go to different levels, say that, a man who is an atheist has lesser power than a woman who is a Christian. We could go on different lengths on that and start drawing the different lines, but let's just focus on the more simplistic issue. A white male is more susceptible to being in positions of power. He is more likely to be in positions of power than his white female counterpart or his black female counterpart.
He's also more likely to get a longer sentence for exactly the same crime. He's also more likely to have his genitals mutilated against his will. He's also more likely to be homeless. He's also more likely to commit suicide. And he's also more likely to lose access to his children. All based on his gender. That's the fucking point. None of these things are male privilege. Do you not get that?
Especially considering that I do it I do this channel on from a political field, so I look at things more on a political scale. There are some things I will admit that men don't. There are small areas where men don't have privilege, but again, significant minority. If you look at the overall, men still hold a wide array of privilege in this country and in the world, frankly. And we're getting to that point where we're starting to have more of an equal footing. But to try to deny that to deny the fact that men already have privilege is, I would say, just an appeal to ignorance.